Derrida's Speech and Phenomena was published in 1967. It offers a critique of phenomenology, focusing on Husserl's work. Derrida unpacks the foundations of phenomenological thought, emphasizing the limits of presence and the role of language in shaping meaning. The work is an example of Derrida's early contributions to the deconstruction of Western metaphysics, where he interrogates the privileging of speech over writing, presence over absence, and immediacy over mediation. In the introduction, Derrida situates his critique within the philosophical tradition, targeting Husserl's phenomenology, particularly its treatment of temporality, subjectivity, and expression. He challenges Husserl's emphasis on the immediacy of consciousness, arguing that such immediacy is underpinned by assumptions about presence that are flawed. He asserts that the logocentric privileging of speech over writing, a hallmark of Husserl's framework, ignores the intrinsic mediation present in all forms of expression. This section sets the stage for a detailed examination of Husserl's legal investigations and ideas pertaining to a pure phenomenology. The first chapter, The Voice and the Phenomena, delves into the phenomenological privileging of speech. Husserl perceives spoken language as the most direct manifestation of thought, aligning it with self-presence. In spoken communication, the speaker and listener are often the same individual, which seems to guarantee a pure transmission of meaning without the distortions of mediation. Derrida challenges this by suggesting that even in speech there is an inherent deferral of meaning. This concept, later central to his idea of difference, reveals that meaning is not fixed or immediate but rather emerges through a process of differentiation and temporal delay. Speech is not as immediate as Husserl assumes. In the second chapter, The Reduction of Ideal Objects, Derrida explores Husserl's distinction between the sensible and the ideal. Husserl holds that ideal objects such as mathematical truths or logical propositions possess a kind of timeless presence that transcends subjective experience. Derrida, however, argues that this ideality is always mediated through language. The so-called pure presence of ideal objects is undermined by the fact that their apprehension requires linguistic representation, which introduces elements of deferral and absence. Thus, ideality is not immune to the play of difference. The third chapter, Meaning and Representation, focuses on Husserl's theory of meaning, particularly his claim that the meaning of a sign is independent of its empirical instantiation. Derrida examines the relationship between expression, speech acts intended to convey meaning, and indication, that is, signs that point to something without necessarily expressing a meaning. For Husserl, expression is primary because it is tied to the speaker's intentionality, whereas indication is secondary and dependent on context. Derrida disrupts this hierarchy by showing that expression itself relies on systems of indication. No expression can be entirely divorced from the context or from the play of differences within language. The fourth chapter, Phenomenology and Temporality, addresses Husserl's treatment of time consciousness, particularly in relation to retention and protension. Husserl conceptualizes consciousness as a flow where the present moment retains traces of the immediate past and anticipates the immediate future. Derrida critiques this model by emphasizing the impossibility of isolating a pure present. The present moment, as conceived by Husserl, is always already contaminated by the non-present. Language, for example, as a temporal phenomenon, exemplifies this dynamic. Each word or sign carries within it echoes of what came before and anticipations of what will follow, thus destabilizing any notion of fixed presence. In the fifth chapter, Signs and Idealities, Derrida returns to the question of the sign's role in phenomenology. Husserl views signs as tools for transmitting ideal meanings, but Derrida contends that signs are not neutral conveyors. They shape and transform the meanings they are supposed to represent. Writing, often dismissed by Husserl as a secondary form of signification, becomes a focal point for Derrida's critique. He argues that writing reveals the inherent iterability of signs, their capacity to be repeated and reinterpreted across different contexts. This iterability disrupts any claim to immediate, unmediated meaning. The sixth chapter, Expression and Creation, further explores the relationship between subject and the sign. Husserl maintains that expression is rooted in the subject's intentionality, making it a more authentic mode of communication than indication. Derrida counters that expression, like indication, is subject to the play of difference. Intentionality cannot fully account for the complexities of linguistic meaning, which always exceeds the speaker's conscious control. This chapter also introduces the idea that communication involves a fundamental irreducibility of the other, a theme that Derrida develops further in his later works. The seventh chapter, The Problem of the Other, examines the implications of Derrida's critique for intersubjectivity. Husserl's phenomenology seeks to ground intersubjectivity in a shared sense of presence and intentionality. Derrida argues that this model fails to account for the radical alterity of the other. The other is not simply an extension of the self, but a disruptive presence that resists assimilation. Language, as the medium of communication, connects and separates individuals, embodying this tension between proximity and distance. In the final chapter, The Supplement of Writing, Derrida directly confronts Husserl's devaluation of writing. For Husserl, writing is a derivative form of expression that lacks the immediacy of speech. Derrida reinterprets writing as a supplement that both completes and displaces speech. The supplement is not merely an addition, but an intrinsic part of the structure it supplements, revealing the inadequacies of the original. Writing, with its emphasis on iterability and deferral, exposes the fallacy of pure presence and challenges the logocentric bias at the heart of phenomenology.